Today in the media conference with Lal Goyal, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to enlighten you with the current topic. And today our topic is not only current but very, very relevant. And the topic is, does India require judicial reform? No corruption unless the judicial system is corrupt. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Our criminal justice system treats you better if you are rich and guilty than if you are poor and innocent. Judicial reform is the complete or partial political reform of a country's judiciary. Judicial reform is often done as a part of wider reform of the country's political system or a legal reform. Areas of the judicial reform often includes codification of law instead of common law, moving from an inquisitorial system to an adversarial system, establishing a stronger judicial independence with judicial councils or changes to appointment procedure. The Indian Constitution follows a fundamental framework which sets the very foundation of the Constitution. The Constitution of India consists of three pillars: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The Indian judiciary is regarded as one of the most important foundations of these three because it is an independent entity. The Indian justice system can prosecute even the country's top officials. The Indian Constitution came into effect on 26 January 1950, and it is known as the world's largest constitution. The Constitution is India's basis of legislation and India's supreme legislation as well. This is dependent on maintaining and upholding law and order. The justice system in India is a court system. The court has the authority to decide and enforce the rules, settle conflicts too. The judiciary system consists of judges and other magistrates who constitute the judicial system's bench. Judicial independence means it is not under the control of either the legislature or the executive. The judges should not behave on the government's behalf or in compliance with the party's wishes of office. For this reason, all Western countries have courts independent of the legislative and the executive. A powerful independent judiciary of great importance for India's development. As the basic core of life is a fast and productive operation, yet by its definition, Indian judiciary has been very weak and inefficient. Furthermore, our laws and their implementations have contributed to immense suffering for the litigants and driven people to search for possible remedies. The very core of society is an autonomous and unbiased judiciary and a swift and effective operation. But by its very nature, our judiciary has become weighty and appallingly slow. Our laws and their implementation and adjudication resulted in immense suffering for litigants and pushed citizens to try extra legal alternatives. Relative to other governmental agencies and even compared to other courts in many countries, the justice system is financed poorly in India. India has one of the highest numbers of under-trial prisoners in the country. A little more than 2/3 of the nearly 4.2 lakhs inmates in India are awaiting trial. The criminals languish in jail not because they are found guilty and sentenced to prison, but because they are convicted of the crimes that are too serious to deserve parole, or merely because they are too vulnerable and de-empowered to secure parole. The propagation of justice in our society is heavily dependent on the judiciary. Hence, its credibility is central to the sustainability of India's civil order. As long as Indian citizens believe in court mechanism and integrity, the judiciary remains the interpreter of the laws and the determinant of social justice. Sadly,
Sorry.
please mute.
Yes.
Sadly, some things restrict the application of our laws to all Indian people. Many who challenge in courts not only pay the burden of the case, they also waste a great deal of time waiting. Another problem which calls for change is to overreach the judiciary. There is a need to appoint more judges in court. In 2015, the Supreme Court overturned the National Commission for Judicial Appointments (NJAC) Act, declaring it unconstitutional. A renewed version of this idea and aim could help to appoint more judges effectively. An autonomous executive authority should be formed specifically to ensure the compliance of court issues decisions to enhance confidence in their efficiency. The government has to take immediate steps to avoid this court system being disrupted and out of control for everyone other than the moneyed. The problem, despite the overwhelming power, is that the Indian judiciary faces certain integral issues. The Indian judicial system, for example, is erratic, underemployed, and above all, extremely slow. The delay in the trial has been proven to be one of the greatest drawbacks of a court system. If we examine in depth about why the Indian judiciary is lagging behind, it can be concluded that the issue lies at the grassroots level. The Indian judiciary has struggled to provide justice. People's levels of difficulty in getting their cases heard contribute significantly to the system's overall chaos. Delay in justice means the time taken to dispose of a case and the time that the court would spend in determining the matter is delayed. The time taken for a case in the High Court or the Supreme Court is beyond imagination, starting from the moment it is taken to file an FIR or file a petition to the moment the judgment is made. There is too much red tape people face when dealing with legal problems. Justice delay creates disillusionment among the litigants and also undermines the capacity of the judicial system. Justice delayed is justice denied holds for India. One of the main reasons for the delay of justice is that the institution of court cases exceeds its disposition. Corruption has penetrated deep into the system. The government-judiciary relationship can make it much easier for government officials to manipulate judges. Top government officials have limited or and use their enormous powers to manipulate the judiciary. Government use various techniques to manipulate the judiciary, including the extreme case of offering gratification to judges. More than 45% of Indian claims that the justice system is corrupt. In the lower courts, corruption is not just rife. Others have alleged that the abuse hits the highest levels that are deeply determinant to the judiciary. The lack of transparency is another issue faced by the Indian judiciary. Substantial issues like the quality of justice and accountability are not properly known in the functioning of the judiciary. Judiciary does not fall within the scope of the Right to Information Act. There have been numerous civil arguments around the country regarding the collegium's framework and the new framework to be presented by the administration for the arrangements of judges, the NJAC. None appear to be sufficiently transparent to make the process of selecting judges clear and understandable to the general public. The most contentious part of the administration of justice is and has been so far many decades the appointment of judges. Independent India started with independent judges who took separate decisions. Many of those choices were not to the establishment's taste, so attempts to call them to heel were made. But the judges stood like a pillar which contributed to the establishment, theorizing that a judiciary was compromised. To some extent, the government was successful in making inroads into judicial independence. The infrastructure requires to be implemented to provide a more effective judiciary. Firstly, poor infrastructure encourages corruption. Records of court cases and decisions are held in less than adequate circumstances, leaving them vulnerable harm or malicious loss. That will be a tremendous amount of paperwork involved. Judiciary is our most trusted and valued institution. However, the mechanisms for judicial appointments have proved to be inadequate in elevating the best and the brightest to the bench. Also, the existing arrangements to hold erring judges to account have failed. In light of the need for judicial reforms in India, FDR and Lok Satta in consultation with three eminent jurists, Shri Justice M.N. Venkatachalaya, Shri Justice J.S. Verma and Shri Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer had proposed various recommendations for judicial reforms, including the creation of an All India Judicial Services AIJS and National Judicial Commission NJC towards ensuring quality and excellence in subordinate judiciary and enhancing accountability in the higher judiciary, respectively. Now, to discuss this very, very important point, but before I will go to the topic, I will just make one clarification that whatsoever I have mentioned in my earlier report, it is because this is the perception in the public. It's not like that the entire judiciary is corrupt. It is not like that the entire judges are bad. We have examples, many examples of the excellent judges, many excellent, everything is there. But the only problem is because the lack of transparency, even a black sheep can give the bad name to the entire judiciary. And that is what we have seen in past few years or decades. So now to discuss today's topic, does India require judicial reform? We have a very, very elite, knowledgeable legal luminaries with us today. And I would like to invite my first guest, and she is Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash. Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash is the former judge of Patna High Court. She hails from Rohini, now in Jharkhand, earlier in Bihar. She is a senior advocate now practicing in Supreme Court of India. She graduated from Patna Women's College. She joined legal profession in 1982 and worked as junior to her father-in-law, the eminent lawyer, late Braj Kishore Prasad, for almost 10 years. During this period, she was trained in criminal law, which was his area of specialization, and therefore inherited the legacy. She has also had the good fortune of working with other distinguished advocates such as Shri V.R. Manohar, Shri Ram Jethmalani, Shri Rajendra Singh, Shri Shanti Bhushan, which have been a huge learning experience for her and helped to enhance her personality and knowledge of law. In 2004, Patna High Court, in its history, for the first time designated lady lawyers as senior advocate, and she was one of the two who were designated. In 2009, she was appointed as judge of Patna High Court. She was the sole member from the eastern region of India of a study group invited by the government of the United States of America in 1999 to visit USA to study the judicial reforms and administration, juvenile justice, law relating to women, prison administration, laws relating to street children. She retired in 2016. She is a regular invitee by Doordarshan, AIR, and various TV channels for panel discussion, including media conference with Lal Goyal. Welcome, Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash, on our show. Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash, you heard what I have read. And you are the one who was invited by the USA to visit to study the judicial reforms there. But what is the condition in India? I think you are the best to speak about that. That's why when I called you, and I know that you are very busy in writing books, but you are kind enough to give the time to speak on this very, very important topic. The topic is, does India require judicial reforms? Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash, please.
Thank you, sir. My introduction is so impressive on paper. I don't know whether I'm as impressive as that. Anyway, let's start with the topic. Actually, I was reading somewhere recently that there are 3 crore cases in various courts pending as for now. And the waiting period of trial is 10 years and 3 to 5 years in High Court. Now, even though this is the report, I've been a judge of the High Court, and I know that I was just before my retirement, I was hearing criminal appeals in which people had been languishing for 10 years after their admission of the appeal. So, you know, the 3 to 5 years may be a national average, but states differ on this according to the data of cases pending before them. There is admittedly, there cannot be any doubt, there cannot be two opinions on this, that reform is needed, where the judicial department is concerned, the entire organization, I would say, needs, a revamp. But what is, the revamp that we're talking about? That is important. And how serious is the government about it? Now, the first thing is, when we talk about reform, I'm glad Mr. Goel hit on this, that actually when we're talking about reform, we're not talking merely about the infrastructure. It is also the quality of judges that need to be appointed. And I entirely agree with that, Every time people talk about reform in judiciary, they talk about, the infrastructure that is concerned. I agree. Everyone knows, that it's extremely important that a magistrate should function, in normal condition. I used to practice in Patna, and Patna Civil Court was naturally being the capital city, the court was also very impressive. But as time went by, the building was completely insufficient for locating so many magistrates. So I have seen magistrates, the provisional courtrooms being built under the staircases with a fan which was almost, not functioning. And the poor magistrate would be, wiping his sweat all the time, because as we know, 10 months of the year in India is hot. And after that, so much of noise of people coming and going and, crossing by. And in that, the magistrate was expected to be efficient, to be, to be fully cognizant to what he's doing. I think it was inhuman for us to expect, the best from him. Now, why it is, even more important that a magistrate should be given more importance than others, I would say is this, because that is the inception of a case is from the magisterial level. And it is, from there it travels. Now, whenever a magistrate makes a mistake, there is a revision which is filed, a quashing which is filed in criminal matters, etc., and then so on and so forth. It comes to the Supreme Court, even to the Supreme Court. Now you expect a magistrate sitting under those conditions to be, able to give the best of his training is unfair. And therefore, infrastructure in that sense is extremely important. The other thing is, before my retirement, I did some, obviously as an inspecting judge, and otherwise also when as a lawyer, I used to go to argue, do final arguments in criminal cases. I would see, judges taking down the evidence of the witnesses by hand. Now, this is a practice in most courts, in where, the magistrates or the session judge, he has to record depositions by longhand. Now, imagine the plight of that person, day in and day out, he's recording that evidence. How is it possible for him, to apply his mind to be able to do, mental work after exhausting himself on this physical facility? That is the point, people say that yes, typewriters have been given and stenos have been provided. But I know for a fact, that one steno is shared between 2-3 judicial officers. And suppose if a witness comes to one court, the other person will say, okay, aap unke yahan jaake kaam kar lijiye. And the other person would, not do his, recording of the evidence, etc. I don't know whether this is the same there in other states, but I saw in Chhattisgarh that they had, electronic typewriters where, the typist would do the work and all that. But whether it was there available for all the other courts, I don't know. That was the one court that I attended. And it was a very sensational case. And therefore, probably, the steno was there. I don't know. But fact is that, we ignore. The point is that we ignore the lower judiciary to the extent that we expect the best from them. And yet we do not provide them the basic facilities. The bathrooms are not there for lady judges also. The bathrooms are not there. For lady lawyers also, bathrooms are inadequate. All that is there, So how do you expect a person to function? And after that, I find just now while Mr. Goel was talking, I checked it from the net, about the budgetary allocation. And you know what the budgetary allocation for the judiciary is? That from 3,173.36 crores in 2019 to 20, it has gone down to 2,200 crores in 2021. So instead of, giving the judiciary in the right place. And mind you, this budgetary allocation also includes the election commission and all the gram niyalayas, etc. So you can imagine, the importance the judiciary is being given for it. Now, everybody has a right, to criticize the judiciary. There's no doubt about it. But the point is that what do we do about such things? Do we raise these issues that why has the budgetary allocation been reduced over the years when it should have been increased? All of us, we know, that the defense budget is increased every year, even though there is no war in the, in the making. There is no need for it till such time as you collide with the others, with other, countries. There is no scope of any war, and especially in the modern world, everyone knows, how war has to be controlled. It is not the times of 1947 or 54 and all that, where Second World War could have gone on. Now we have a world body which controls such situations. And yet the defense budget is increased every year, and that also phenomenally. And here the judicial budget is decreased. And the important thing is, that even infrastructure, Mr. Goel, you know what? From 990 crores, it has come down to 762 crores. So even infrastructure is decreased. Infrastructure is decreased, but you expect the judiciary to do the best of work. How is it possible? How is it possible? It's not possible. So every time I would think that people talk about, the judiciary not working to its optimum level, an issue should also be raised about what is the infrastructure that is being provided to them. Please go and have a look. Putting things on a brochure or putting in a paper, on a piece of paper and flashing it all around, that Delhi may be a very pampered city and therefore you might be having the best infrastructure, but that's not true of the other states. Please have a look and see under what conditions the judicial officers are working. And after that, criticize the judiciary as much as you want. Now, this is where, the physical bit is concerned. But at the same time, I would think, that there is a need for reform in the attitude that we have. And that attitude is, different both for the trial court as well as the high courts and the, the higher judiciary. Now, the attitude is what? In the lower court, everyone knows, it is tarikh par tarikh dete jaye. So why is every magistrate so indulgent about giving dates? I can understand, that there are some dates which are essential, but not all adjournments are essential. So, the first thing, every time I go for, a conference with judicial officers, the first thing that the thing that I say is that first of all, take stock of the situation that you are in. For example, if I am working on this table, I will see what files are there, what file needs, more attention, which files need, less attention, which can be disposed of, quickly, which can be, which has to be given more time, etc., etc. So you have, a plan in your mind as to how you have to go about it. And efficiency cannot be increased merely by providing you an air conditioner or a very good office, unless the person manning that chair, is efficient in his mind. The efficiency has to come from the mind. The way you have to take stock of the situation, the way you do it, the way you control your bench. Because as a lawyer also, I know that we would never seek adjournments before a judge who was strict, who would not grant adjournments. We would make sure, that we are fully prepared every time we went before that person, before that particular judge, and he would not brook any adjournment. No prayer as such, no frivolous prayers. So it's the way you handle a situation is also largely dependent, on the need for reform. And here I think, that people need to be really educated, that you need to do your work properly, in the sense that this is the situation, which demands of you. Suppose, a sessions trial has to begin on a certain date. You must have a plan that these witnesses are to be summoned on a particular date. This is how you're going to go about it. Share this information with the defense lawyer, share this information with the PP, and make sure, that the PP is also be prepared to bring the witnesses on the dates fixed. So you have a plan beforehand of how to have of how to conduct a trial. Criminal trials, especially sessions trials, are supposed to be held day to day. When sessions trial is being held day to day now? Almost none, except in cases where in sensational matters where the Supreme Court, where the High Court or the High Court is bearing pressure on the trial court to have it on a day-to-day affair. Otherwise, the system of a day-to-day trial is gone. That is because we don't have a plan. We need to have a plan. The thing is, also that lawyers, we tend to blame lawyers, for seeking adjournment. But I think, the judge is also equally wrong there, because he's also not prepared with the case that he is handling. If he's, prepared with the case that he is handling, he will just cut the lawyer short and say that please answer me on these 2-3 questions and tell me whether, this point of law is made out or not. If, that is done, obviously, the efficiency will increase. I think, we need to all undergo a training by which, within the limited resources, we must learn how best, we can handle a situation. I'll tell you about myself that I was sitting, in quashing applications, hearing a quashing application. And, a High Court judge is only allocated the cases according to the Chief Justice, by the Chief Justice. So the Chief Justice gave me, some certain cases between such and such year. I went up to her and I told her, don't say this year to this year, just say up to this year. And then I will see that all the cases up to this year are, handled properly. And she accepted my suggestion. And after that, she gave me all the cases. She gave me a free hand. She said up till 2000, whatever, 10, all quashing matters will be listed before Anjana Prakash. So the matters came before me. When the matters came before me, there were very few cases, which were of an older years. So I called the office and I asked them why, such few cases are being listed. They said, they are not ripe for hearing. I said, whether ripe for hearing or not, I will look into it. Please sort them all out and put them on the list. I will see, whether, I'm able to handle them or not. So my initiative made them sort out the pending cases. And let me tell you, according to the official records, if there were 1,500 cases which were pending, fact was that only 780 or some odd cases were pending. They were the previous files. Otherwise, they were not even updated that these number of files had already been disposed of. So we remained, unaware that in fact, there were lesser number of cases pending than which was reflected on the list. So I got the office and I said, I will not ask any questions. The problem is also this, that every time a judge pulls up, the office for not putting up the list and all that, the poor things, they get scared and they think, अरे हमारे ऊपर तो departmental अब ये action होगा, इसीलिए इसको नहीं लगाना better होगा. Just brush it under the carpet. But I said that I will not take any action against you, but please help the judiciary, please help Patna High Court in doing this. So they listed all the cases, and after that I realized, with the help of the lawyers concerned, that most of the cases could be disposed of without, the mandatory whatever requirement that was ordered. For example, there were many revisions which were pending, saying that I hope I'm not boring any of you.
No. Please go ahead. But only thing is that I will be coming to that you to next. Yeah.
Okay.
So
1 minute. So what happened was that suppose if there were lower court records which had not come, I would tell the lawyers, you provide me with the evidence of the statements of the witnesses, and we'll dispose it of, and they would readily do so. So it's the way you manage. I'm not an ideal person. I'm not trying to present myself as some kind of an exceptional person. I'm also a very routine, ordinary person. But the point is, that you need to give your 100% to in every capacity that you're working. The third is, yes, sir, you spoke very well about the governmental, pressure on the judges. I would think, that it's only a person who who's amenable to such kind of pressure is pressured by the government. No other person can pressure a judicial officer, no matter, even if he is a magistrate, nobody can do it. Even if he's a Supreme Court, nobody can do it. So your reputation yourself has to be absolutely impeccable. And then the government is not going to touch you, or no organization is going to touch you. And yes, you do need, the right person for the right post. Recently also there has been an appointment. You know that person, has been completely dismissive of the Dalits, of women, of, the marginalized class, etc. And that person is, given a position where he's supposed to uphold human rights. What is this? I mean, it's the, it's somehow or the other, it doesn't, settle well with an ordinary citizen. It doesn't settle well. So therefore, and that is the interference of the government when you say, that this is the interference. This is the interference. That obviously, if you're appointed at such a place, how are you going to safeguard, the human rights? Obviously not. When you've never had any respect for it, when your track record has been so bad, how can you can uphold it? So that person, having been chosen by the government, is a wrong person, and that is impediment to justice. Thank you, sir. I think I should.
Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash.
Don't mind my forthrightness, sir.
Oh, first of all, for the first time, I am not agreeing with you at all. You mentioned that you are a ordinary person. No. No, you are such a person. See, whatsoever you say, but we know you are so forthright, and your respect in the not only in the judiciary, but I think the general public also respect you because of your forthrightness, your honesty, your hard working. So don't say that you are an ordinary normal. No, you are because yes, so we. No. This is.
I'm blessed, sir. I'm blessed.
Thank you, Honorable Justice Prakash. But 3 points which I will just highlight. What she says is about the pending cases. Justice Prakash, as per the latest reports which I have, is about 4.5 crores cases are now pending. And you rightly said about the magistrate condition. I also saw in many of the places how they are working, how the conditions are so pathetic. But nobody wants to do the expenditure on judiciary. Although my opinion is a bit different, I have done so many programs on this. I always say whatsoever amount judiciary is collecting today as a court fees, which is in crores and crores and crores of rupees every year, they should not part anything to the government. They should see to it that every money should be spent only in the infrastructure of the judiciary. And she mentioned about the budget is lowering. Why? One side, we have lots of money to spend on projects like Central Vista, 20,000 crores. And we have no money to give to for the judicial system. This is the wrong decisions, I must say, but why they are taking, I don't know. Then she has mentioned about Tariq pe Tariq. Yes, but there are, what I understood is that the defense lawyer always say, we will take the date so that let the file will be big. So this file will not, the other magistrate or the judge will not touch this file, and your case, because your case is weak. And as you rightly says, if the advocate says that you are a strict judge, he or she will try to avoid appearing. So that one of the reasons, I will not blame that it is on the magistrate or judge, but yes, you rightly said, if the judge is strict and he says or she says, please, okay, this points you answer me, that definitely the advocates will start appearing without fail. And what about this, what she says, the last point is very important, that government cannot pressurize the judges. But unfortunately, Honorable Justice Prakash, we have seen for last 2-3 incidents in Supreme Court, where not only 2-3, I say more, where the judges have been pressurized, they have been compromised, or they have been giving such a lucrative offer that so many things. And in the recently you have spoken, and I was so happy when I read your statement on that day. I send you the congress, because someone, if You people, the legal luminary will not come and speak. How the general public will know what is happening. Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash, for giving your very, very forthright and honest views. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to invite my next guest, and she is Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Advocate Jyoti Pawar is practicing law for last more than 33 years in Mumbai. She has done masters in science and masters in law. She worked as a special public prosecutor in Session Judge Court, Mumbai, and was on teaching faculty of JC Law College. In 1995, she was appointed as additional public prosecutor, High Court, dealing with important criminal writs as well as criminal appeals. Thereafter, in 1999, she was appointed as the head of writ appellate side, which gave her a chance to defend government in high stakes matters as well as public interest litigations touching social causes. She was in the panel of central government as senior counsel, Mahada BMC in the High Court, Mumbai. At present, she is practicing in High Court, Mumbai. Welcome, Advocate Jyoti Pawar, on our show. Advocate Jyoti Pawar, you have heard what Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash has spoken. We would like to know your views. Does India require judicial reform? Advocate Jyoti Pawar, please.
Good morning to all the panelists, and also good morning to the viewers who are connected to the program today. My first thing is this, that judicial reforms are the necessity of the hour today, for the reasons that the layman should not have some contrary views about the judges, which are often spoken due to various reasons. Now, the first reason is, I would put it into 2-3 points, because the entire topic of judicial reform cannot be completed, nor it can be compiled in such few limited minutes. So first thing which I will be concentrating is the appointment of judges. The appointment of judges is concerned, as far as High Court is concerned, it's very important that merit should not be compromised, wherein all the judges who are appointed in the world, though no judges appoint judges, but in India, it is the judges' prerogative to appoint the judges. The NJC, which was quashed as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in 2014, in fact, was a better remedy for the existing system. But the NJC was not allowed to be brought, rather, by the judges, as their prerogative to appoint judges would have been actually compromised. So what has happened, that judges' relatives, judges, those who are near ones, judges' juniors, or networking, this is playing a very effective role in appointment of judges today. And all the clan which is close to them, they are appointed as High Court judges, compromising very much on the quality of judges which we have today. Now, actually, in 60s and 70s, when the government used to appoint the judges, we had really wonderful judges like Krishna Iyer and so many others. Now, as far as after 2070, or rather in 80s, the compromise was so much that the quality of judges which we have don't stand to the quality of judges that we earlier had. Now, sir, with due respect, what has happened, that Uncle Judge syndrome is very much there in high courts, and the persons, those who are practicing before them, they try to get advantage even from the other persons, other judges, because they are brother judges of their father or whoever relative that is sitting over there. Though they say that they not before me, but the other judges are their colleagues and they are bound to give them favorable orders. So litigants also try to engage them for their matters, and orders are passed in favor of those. So this type of corruption comes in. Corruption can be defined in so many different ways, sir. It may not be only regarding taking money. It can be also getting appointed by some networking, or because you're related. That is also one type of corruption. And I feel that that type of corruption has already come in the judiciary. Now, as far as High Court is concerned, sir, there should be strict rules. I think that the matter which has been taken by the government, that the age of the judges should be increased from 62 to 65. That's a very good suggestion, in fact, because most of the High Court judges before retirement, they look for alluring posts from the government side, like getting themselves appointed on some tribunals or so on. And that becomes another corruption point, because I have myself seen in High Court. I don't know how much Justice Prakash agrees with me, but there are so many judges in our High Court also that before retirement, they used to take retirement for 6 months because the post would have been gone otherwise of the tribunal which lay vacant, and they used to get appointed there. It's very unfortunate. Rather, there should be a strict rule that such judges should not be given appointment on the government post. And in fact, the 14th Law Commission has stated in it that such things should not occur, that judges should not get reappointed on the government post. We have seen that even the Supreme Court judge is now the governor of a state, which is very wrong practice, according to me. And that itself gives the judges a edge that yes, some judgments have to be passed in the favor of the government, and that is what they want to satisfy the government, and so that there can be quid pro quo. This is very unfortunate for the judicial system and very damaging also. Now, next point which I will be covering is the pendency of cases. The pendency of cases is so much in the High Court that it amounts to, I think, so what Mr. Lal has stated, that it is more than 4 crores now. And what has happened, that due to pendency, the litigants have already lost faith in the judicial system, because everybody says that we have to come here and then go taking a tarikh pe tarikh. That is what Madam said just now. And that is very true. But today in the pandemic, we have come to know that digitalization of all these things can be really very well done. And things can be managed from the computer itself. Like in Sessions Court, I have also worked there. The evidence which were rendered by the witnesses were called so many times to the court that they used to get fed up and they used to turn hostile. Turning hostile then became a great problem, as the matter would be decided in the favor of the accused. That also was wrong. So digitalization will also give this chance to the judiciary that the witnesses can be examined at the place where they are, so they don't have to travel to the court. And nobody says that, okay, we don't want to fall into all this, as it takes our time and we have to travel to court all the time. So this will also save the time, and it will also help the judiciary very much to at least complete the cases, trials very soon. In High Court, there is no question of witnesses. As far as only original side is concerned, the witnesses are examined only on the civil side. Otherwise, the High Court has already stated, in one of my cases, they have stated that even the prisoners who were there in the jail, they need not be brought to the court, or they should not be produced in the court. It can be by video conferencing. And they can also be examined, or whatever it is, through video conference only. And they should make a statement. That was a very good idea. That was a trial which was taken by the High Court, and it worked very well. So I feel that this type of shortcut methods have to be derived. And as far as High Court is concerned, I have seen that whenever the senior counsels from Delhi and very big names, they appear before the court, they are given days and days of in the matter to argue the case. And if a junior is there, he is immediately shooed off. That should not be the practice. Every case should be weighed on its own merits. And I feel that there should be some time which should be fixed by the High Court judges for hearing a matter. And whether it is a senior counsel or a junior counsel, a fixed time slot should be given for arguments. In that particular time only the arguments have to be finished. If it remains, then a written submission should be given to the court. That's the best thing, so that no points are missed and nobody can allege that, yes, we could not argue this point before the court, and this has not been taken into consideration. So written submission should be given in all the cases where the judges should examine that, and they should pass judgments. Now, as far as justice delayed is just justice denied, they say, but I would also say that justice hurried is justice buried. Because in one of the matters where High Court judges, they used to sit from 10 o'clock. Actually, the court starts from 11 o'clock, but they used to sit from 10 o'clock. And in the evening, the court finishes by 5 o'clock. They used to sit till 7 o'clock in the evening, 8 o'clock, sometimes even 10 o'clock. But that is not only going to solve the case. But as far as I said, that time slot should be allotted to the matters. And in that matter, and no adjournment should be given unless and until it is really very, very urgent, or urgency of the matter should be seen, and then only adjournment should be given. Otherwise, it should be by strict rule that no adjournment should be given in the matter. Now, as far as justice buried is concerned, sir, I have seen that these judges used to sit for overtime in the courts, and division bench who used to pass judgments. There were contrary judgments of both the division bench. One judge used to pass another judgment, other judge used to pass another judgment. So this is very unfortunate that rule of law is not followed by any of the judges, I would say, and they pass judgments according to their whims and fancies, and such things happen. It was a mockery when we saw that contrary judgments were passed by the same division bench, and it was brought to the notice of the court. So this should not happen. And other thing is this, that the appointment to the tribunal should be avoided. because as far as appointment to the tribunals and other various organs of government is concerned, the judges are lured to this by the legislature or the government so that they can pass judgments in their favor when they are sitting as high court judges. Now, sir, as far as the IJS is concerned, that is the Indian Judicial Service is concerned, the 14th Law Commission has stated that there should be certain points which should be strictly followed. But nobody wants to take it forward because it will be not in their favor, rather not in the favor of the judges. And therefore, nobody wants to take it forward. Only Chhattisgarh High Court, I have heard that they have established the IJS and they have followed these recommendations which are given by the Law Commission. But as far as the now I feel that the judiciary really should do serious introspection of what is going on, and it should not happen so that the layman's mind is taken that no, judiciary is useless and we cannot waste time over there, and therefore lost faith in the judiciary. That should not happen, because this will be the collapse of one of the important arms of the constitution. Now, sir, what I want to say is this, that as far as the appointments are concerned, I have already said that appointments have to be very transparent. There has to be alternate method for appointment, and that should be at least on trial basis, should be tried. And according to me, as far as alternate methods are concerned, even mediation and arbitration should be in fact allowed by the High Court, or rather they should be, most of the matters should go to the arbitrator for or mediation that can be solved. Also, I feel that as far as criminal matters are concerned, so many times, like Madam has said, that people are languishing in jails. Now, after conviction, the sentence that, rather before the conviction, the under trial prisoners, they are in the jail who are not given bail. And they have already undergone 10 years in the prison, and where the punishment is only, say, 8, 9 years or 10 years. Such type of cases should be segregated, and the person who has already undergone the punishment or a little bit period is left, immediately that case should be put before the court and it should be decided immediately. That is also one time savior which can, where the litigant, rather the accused, which are languishing in jail, they can be released. And that way, criminal justice system can be little bit, at least, can be improved. Now, sir, as far as the judiciary is concerned, I feel that senior counsels, it has really given a very bad impression that senior most counsels in the Supreme Court can even open the courts at 12 o'clock in the midnight. But what happens for poor person who has suffered a lot of injustice at the hands of the government or any other person? If he goes to Supreme Court, can that be also done? That also has to be looked by the Supreme Court. Now, it is very unfortunate for us that the judiciary, by functioning this manner, we cannot at all rely on, it should not be a day that we cannot rely on the judiciary, as it is one of the most important part, I feel, of the this constitution. Now, sir, what has happened, that there's also an ego problem with the judges. I feel that legislature, judges, and the judiciary and the executive form the three parts of three organs of the constitution. What happens, sir, during the hearing of the matters, some of the judges, they feel that just to see that their supremacy is satisfied, what they do, that they call the executive persons senior IAS officers, and they make them sit in the courts for days together. And if they don't condemn, they always scare them with contempt of court proceedings against them. That's very unfortunate. Just to develop and rather establish their supremacy, these things should be avoided, because the senior officers, only the IAS officers, are not responsible for all the decisions which are taken by the government. And I feel that if a senior IAS officer is called in the court, that matter should be heard on priority and he should be released so that he can do his own work. I have seen where in my matters, some of the judges in the High Court, they made the senior most IAS officers sit in the court for regular 5, 6 days. And in fact, their work was compromised over sitting in the court. That should be also one of the points which should not be done at all by the, and actually there should be no ego between the three, and they should independently function. As far as the judiciary is concerned, we have to see that the judiciary is very much responsible today for the growth of independent India, and they contribute a lot, because the people today at least have faith that yes, we will not be given justice anywhere. But yes, if we go to judges or if we go to the doors of justice, we will definitely get some type of justice, and we still have faith in that. So to carry on with this faith, these type of rather improvements are very much must for the judiciary. It should take an introspection and make such changes, which are very, very important, sir. This is what is my say.
Thank you very
so
much, thank you very
so
much, Advocate Jyoti Pawar, for giving your views. I will just highlight one or two points. One, she says about the appointment transparency, and she says generally the High Court or Supreme Court judges try to push their own relatives as the judge. I would not like to comment because there are many instances in past we have already, everybody has seen. But what she says, the government post retirement is not should be here. Somebody has made MP, somebody has made the governor. That is, and the head of the commission, as even Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash also mentioned. So instead of that, they should try to avoid any lucrative post to any retired judges, so that judges can work fairly without any pressure or without any giving any priority to anyone. And one more point which she has raised is no priority should be given to the senior counsel, whether he is from Delhi or Bombay or Mumbai or anywhere. All advocates should be treated at par. Thank you very much, Advocate Pawar, for giving your views. Now, I would like to invite my next panelist, and he's Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma. Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma is a leading lawyer of Western UP with more than 41 years of practice. He is regularly appearing in Supreme Court and different high courts, including Allahabad, Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, Andhra Pradesh, etc. He is extensively practicing constitutional, civil, and taxation matters. He is also rendering social services. He is Secretary of Kans Nikandan Trust, Mathura. He is Founder Secretary of Civil Lawyers Forum and President thereafter. Welcome, Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma, on our show. Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma, you have heard what Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash as well as Advocate Jyoti Pawar has mentioned. Now, we would like to know from you that does India require judicial reform? Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma, please.
Mr. Goyal, first I would like to congratulate you for having such a topic of national importance. Actually, your topic is so wide that this cannot be covered in one webinar. It requires a series of webinars, and in one webinar, only a few topics or few points may be raised in one webinar. So today, first I am raising the first point of tax on justice. Initially, in our ancient times, the judicial system was like that. The delivery of justice was a pious duty of the king. And this duty was being performed without any charge or tax. Otherwise also, performance of a duty cannot be chargeable. There was no codification of law at that time, and the system was based on principles of natural justice. Thereafter, in Mughal period also, the justice was being delivered without any charge or tax, and during Mughal period, a separate department was being established, called at that time Mahkamai Adalat. Particularly during the regime of Akbar, so many new changes were introduced in this judicial system and revenue system also. Todarmal introduced the land revenue system, record of lands were created, and all these khasras, khatoni, this system were created by at the time of Todarmal, which we are following even today. But entire this matter was without any charge. Later on, when Britishers came to our country, particularly Britishers, they have totally changed the judicial system. They introduced a fresh judicial system, and their intention to create the system was not to get the justice delivered to the public of the India, but to excuse money from the public of India and to befool the public that you will get the justice on next date, and that next date may not come for several years. With this intention, the Court Fees Act was introduced in 1870. And this court fees is not only a one-time court fees that after at the time of filing of the suit or the appeal, rather, on every date and every time, whatever you want to do anything, everything is chargeable. Every application court fees is to be fixed, every affidavit court fees to be, whatever you want to do, some amount of the court fees is to be paid by the person. So it is a regular source of income for the Britishers. And their main purpose was to earn the money and not to give the justice. It is very unfortunate to say that the same system has been adopted by our government after independence. Court Fees Act and other all the laws. And you will surprised to know that when East India Company started to govern the eastern part of Bengal, they started to create law in the name of Bengal regulations. And there are Bengal regulations from 1793 to up to 1834. And all those Bengal regulations promulgated by East India Company, they are very much applicable and having a binding force of law till today. I have also contested so many cases under Bengal regulations up to Honorable Allahabad High Court. In 1963, one matter reached to Honorable Supreme Court under Bengal regulation dispute. After deciding that matter, Supreme Court had written a specific paragraph in the judgment suggesting the government that all these Bengal regulations should be repealed and fresh law should be enacted as per the need of the time. But I'm sorry to say that since 63, this is 2021, 58 years have gone. So many law commissions have gone, so many governments have gone, but all those Bengal regulations created by East India Company are even governing us even today. Very sad aspect of the law. Anyway, this Court Fees Act also seems to be against our constitution because it is also a fundamental right of a person to get the justice. And it is the duty of the state to impart the justice. At the most, some charges may be taken by the government just to meet out the expenses of delivery of justice. But this delivery of justice should not be made a source of revenue. And it is against the constitution. But this Court Fees Act could not be declared ultra vires till today. I am remembering one thing. In January 1986, I got an opportunity to meet Honorable Justice V.R. Krishnaiyer at Trivandrum. He was retired by that time. I was there in some matter at Trivandrum High Court. So during the discussion, I inquired from him that, sir, why this Court Fees Act could not be declared ultra vires during your period in Supreme Court? He smiled and said that there was one occasion when one matter, State Bank of India has challenged the veracity of Court Fees Act, and it was before me to be decided. And I was in a mood to declare it ultra vires, but the then Attorney General suggested the government to get the matter settled out of court, otherwise the Court Fees Act may be struck off. And the government settled the matter out of court by appointing some arbitration, and the matter could not be decided on merit. Then he inquired from me that at Allahabad High Court, there was a matter challenging the veracity of the Court Fees Act at 78. So he inquired from me what happened to that case. I was not known at all. Then he told me that it was in a division bench of Justice Satish Chandra, who was the Chief Justice of that time. And Honorable Satish Chandra reached to Honorable V.R. Krishnaiyer to discuss some points to strike out that Court Fees Act. Later on, I inquired into the matter. I came to know that at that time also in 1979, the Advocate General of UP suggested the government to get the matter settled out of court, otherwise the Court Fees Act may be struck off. And UP government also get that matter settled out of court, and the Court Fees Act is existing even today, and public has to make the payment in spite of the fact that it is apparently against the provisions of our constitution. This is going on. Anyway, with regard to this system, justice as doorstep was a proverb. This directly relates to decentralization of justice system. Today, we are having a three-tier system: district level, state level, and central level. Some states have started to fix some courts at junior courts at tehsil level also. But actually, we should follow the principle of Mahatma Gandhi of Gram Nyayalaya, so that most of the disputes may be settled at village level. But that theory of Gram Nyayalaya has not been accepted at all by any of the state government or the central government till today. Though in Panchayat Raj Act, some provisions have been made to deliver some preliminary justice by the appointed panchas, elected panchas, but during the internal politics of every village, this system could not be successful at all. So provisions are there in the Panchayat Raj Act, but it is in the entire country, this system is not successful at all because of those panchas are being elected from the residents of the village itself, and the internal politics works at that. So that is not fruitful at all. Now, from district level, decentralization should be at least to Tehsil level. And from High Court level or Supreme Court level, I would like to say that the jurisdiction of the High Court and Supreme Court may be bifurcated in two parts. The first part should be the appellate jurisdiction or the revisional jurisdiction. These appellate jurisdiction or revisional jurisdiction of High Court may be decided by the benches established at least commissioner level, so that the justice may be nearer to the person, nearer to the litigants. And same way, the appellate jurisdiction of Honorable Supreme Court may be decided, may be exercised by the benches established at state level. By that process, at the separate benches should be there for the appellate or revisional jurisdiction, there may be a speedy disposal of the cases. But the constitutional matter and PIS, they may be decided by the state high courts established already or the Supreme Court established at the time, so that the constitutional matters may be decided by the regular courts. One thing is being said against the decentralization of the judicial system, that if the courts are being decentralized like that, then the standard of the system will go down. I don't agree with this because of, number one, the standard is already going down. When the high courts are there at state capital or some big city, or Supreme Court is there at Delhi, even then the standards are going down. Number two, it may be said that for a certain time, suppose if some high court bench is coming at a particular district, there may not be that standard which is having a present day, but with the passage of time, the bar and bench will develop itself, and within a few years, the standard will go high. So this is simply a pretext not to decentralize the judicial system, but this decentralization is very much required at all for the speedy justice. Now the next thing is, with regard to the what Justice Prakash has already said, the quality of the judges. Though infrastructure is very weak, this is absolutely correct, and a good infrastructure naturally increases the efficiency of the judicial officers. So the infrastructure must be increased. But the quantity of the judicial officers should also be raised, and the quality of the judicial officers must also be raised. To raise the quality of judicial officers, recently, I think prior to 5 or 6 months before, our then CGI Bobde gave a suggestion to the government that the present system of legal education is producing the good lawyers, but it is not producing the good judges, judicial officers. So a separate legal education system should be created to create good judicial officers. And he suggested that an all India level competitive examination should be held for a course of 2 or 3 years to getting the admission. And after admission, 2-3 years course should be completed by those persons. And after completing it, direct appointment should be, posting should be given as the judicial officers. And so that a separate legal education may be provided to the person, to those persons, instead of the general legal education which is being provided for the lawyers. But our present government specifically refused this suggestion, and this suggestion has gone waste. but the requirement of improving of the quality of judicial officer is very much there. How it is to be improved, government has not think over at all. With regard to delays also, as I have said earlier, the system was created by the Britishers not to deliver the justice, but to befool the public and to earn the money. And unfortunately, same system is there. So this system is to be totally changed. And recently, in one judgment on 22nd of April, this 2021, a judgment was delivered by our Honorable Supreme Court, wherein some directions have been given to the government to amend so many statutes, including CPC and CRPC, so that the quick delivery of justice may be possible. And till then, a guideline has been framed to be exercised by the trial courts. So instead of statutory law, now these guidelines shall be binding and they are to be followed so that the justice delivery system may be expedited. These guidelines are yet to be exercised and we have yet to see what will happen to these guidelines, what shall be the result. But as all have said, our justice delivery system requires a completely change and reforms. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma, for giving your views. And as Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma has mentioned, I will just highlight 1 or 2 points. One he says that why anyone has to pay court fees for getting the justice, because it's the duty of the government to provide the justice to every citizen of the country. So why the charges are being levied? Second point, he says that justice should be delivered to every person at door, where there is a proverb called justice at doorstep. Why that's not been fulfilled? He also quoted Mahatma Gandhi's thing, why not it is in the village level. He also suggested for the bifurcation of the high courts the delivery system or the accepting the appeal or the petition in a legal way, so that can be bifurcated. So many suggestions he has given, including that now the guidelines have been issued and Mr. Bobde has given good suggestions, but the government of India has not accepted those. Thank you very much, Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma. Paucity of time, so I have to invite my next guest, and she's Advocate Anita Mahapatra. And Advocate Anita Mahapatra is an eminent lawyer and a partner in Attorney Alliance law firm based of Delhi. She is having more than 24 years of work experience in different fields, out of which 12 years of experience in the legal field. She is a daughter of an army officer, so punctuality, sincerity, and honesty in her. She has competed lakhs of cadets to be on the Rajpath Cadet in the year 1992. She is silver medalist in NCC. She's completed LLB in 1996. She has served in schools. She has worked in BPO sector for United States processes. She has a vast experience working as corporate lawyer. She switched over to hard cold litigations later and has opened a law firm with the name and style of Attorney Alliance. The firm provides legal help and services in all kinds of cases. Her beliefs there is lack of entry to justice for poor. Lawyers must do pro bono work, and it's possible only if they inculcate empathy. That's why she's giving access to justice for victim women, laborers, daily wagers, contractual workers, state and central government employees who are deprived of their legal rights. Advocate Anita Mahapatra, apart from her professional career, is a marathon runner, a fitness freak, a passionate dancer, and a theater actor. She has achieved summit of Mount Potalsu Peak, which is 13,800 feet at the age of 47. Her life has always been challenging, being a single mother, and she has been facing it with a high spirit. Welcome, Advocate Anita Mahapatra on our show. Advocate Anita Mahapatra, you have heard what Honorable Justice Prakash has mentioned, what Advocate Jyoti Pawar has mentioned, and what Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma has mentioned. Now, we would like to know from you, does India require justice reform, judicial reform? Advocate Anita Mahapatra, please.
Good morning, Mr. Lal Goyal. Good morning, all the panelists here, and good morning to everyone whosoever is listening to this webinar. So thank you so much for giving me opportunity to speak about this subject on this platform. See, the Constitution of India consists of 3 pillars: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The Indian judiciary is regarded as one of the most important foundation of these three pillars because it's an independent entity. And the Indian judiciary plays an increasingly important role in the life and governance of this country. A strong and independent judiciary is very important for the growth of India, since a speedy and efficient system are very essence of the society. But Indian judiciary, by its very nature, has become very slow and inefficient. Besides, our law and their interpretation has led to enormous misery for the litigants, particularly. I'll bifurcate it in three parts. What are the problems that judiciary is facing? And I'll also tell why judicial reform is required, and will tell in short what are the solutions. So the first primary problem which I see is judicial backlog. It's a huge backlog of cases which are proving to be primary problem for judiciary. Around 60,000 cases pending in Supreme Court, then 44 lakh cases in High Court, and 3 crores in subordinate court. Or altogether, like Mr. Goel said, it's more than 4 crores backlog in judicial. Second primary is shortage of judges. Speedy disposal of cases can met with allotment of new judges. 12 judges seat is still vacant in Supreme Court. 490 seats is still vacant in High Court across the India, and 4,000 seats are still vacant in subordinate courts. Third important primary problem is judicial corruption. Corruption is Indian judiciary is very common. According to various survey, corruption is very pervasive throughout the country. Over 45% of Indians believe that judiciary is corrupt. Not only corruption rampant in the lower courts, some have alleged that this corruption reaches the highest levels, which is greatly damaging to the judicial system. Now, judicial overreach is also one of the problem. Some are of the opinion that the courts have moved far beyond the function assigned to them under the Constitution, division of responsibilities among the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Like our panelists have already explained about this. Now, few more important problems which judiciary is facing is delay in justice, lack of transparency, under trial accused, they are still in jail for indefinite period, infrastructure. These things have already been covered by our panelists today. Now, why judicial reform is required? Because it's to ensure speedy justice. Yes, important first thing. Because judiciary as it is a guardian of a constitution, and court has all the virtual absolute power, of course, to clear the backlog cases. And if in its absence, the judicial system ends up serving the interest of the corrupt and the lawbreakers. So it is need of an hour to bring in certain judicial reforms in our country. It's not just important for social welfare, but also economic welfare as a sound and efficient dispute resolution. Now it's time that the judiciary must take some strong steps to ensure that the system as a whole is working expeditiously. Let me give you some examples. Like vacations must be reduced to a week in subordinate courts as well as in high courts. There is a need to increase the time of everyday working of the courts at least by half an hour. I mean, just it's a minimum time I'm increasing half an hour. The adjournment must be granted strictly in accordance with the provision of Order 17 of CPC in order to avoid unnecessary delay. Increase in the number of sanctioned judges. See, like in Supreme Court, sanctioned judges are 34. Let us increase to 37. So increase age of judges in High Court, like from 62 to 65. Top senior most judges in SC may hear cases involving constitution and not any level of cases. Like Article 136 is, I will not say it is misused, it is being overused by Supreme Court. All kind of cases are being heard by them. They are sitting there to hear constitution cases which involves constitution, not the matrimonial cases which says there is a desertion of a wife by husband. So they are not there to hear these PT cases. This is completely my opinion. So quality of judges also to be improved. Repeal outdated law, absolute laws that should also be repealed. And yes, we are very slow in embracing digital technology, and judiciary is really very slow in adapting digital technology, which they should adapt. Also, it's important for courts to understand that certain types of cases to be tried as soon as possible, like in rape cases, the victim must not wait for 10 to 20 years for justice. And in terrorism cases, where the chances of prosecuting innocents are high due to pressure on police to act promptly, the courts must try such cases as soon as possible so that the state itself doesn't give birth to victims, as mentioned above, while proving justice to many other victims. So law can't be stagnant. They have to change with the pace of the society. To expedite the case, we have lok adalat, we have arbitration, we have mediation, tribunal commission. I mean, laws are there, but it is not being implemented properly. It has to be implemented. So I won't say that no reforms has been taken place. It has been taken place time to time. So when today, I would at the end, I would say when today lack of professional ethics is a big problem that even the bar itself is facing. In legal education, one just not need to be taught what law is, but also how it has to be practiced honestly and ethically is an urgent judicial reform needed today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Advocate Anita Mahapatra, for giving your views. And she is very clear. She says the corruption is there. We have to remove the corruption. She has given very good suggestions also. Paucity of time, so I have to go for the next segment. And my first question goes to Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash. And Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash, are you there?
Yes, sir. Very much here.
Okay, now, yeah, now we can see you. See, recently we have seen for last 2-3 years that there is a tendency that the judges are criticizing the CGI or even the Chief Justice of High Court, which you have seen recently in the case of West Bengal. Earlier, we have seen in Supreme Court, the judges are openly criticizing the CGI. Don't you think it shakens the faith of the public in the judiciary when they feel that the judges are not happy, they are criticizing the judgments or the way they are behaving among themselves? How we are sure that we will get a fair judgment? Honorable Prakash, please.
Sir, I would actually, I am not in favor. Actually, I don't really like the system of judges openly talking about other judges and criticizing them. Because where the press conference was concerned, I would think, there is a in-house mechanism by which, they could have resolved that issue, where that the press conference is concerned. The second thing that you said, sir, about the West Bengal judge having written to the Chief Justice, sir, it was a private communication to the Chief Justice. It is another thing that it is released to the press. I mean, like the press gets a hold of it, but it was a private communication to the Chief Justice, which could have been done, sir. That I don't think. I think the judge was completely right in pointing out to the Chief Justice if he was in agreement in a private letter to him. So there, I think the judge was right. The Calcutta High Court judge was right. But where the press conference is concerned, sir, I was quite taken aback and quite shaken up by this, the turn of events. Somehow the other it didn't gel with me. There are 2 or 3 things, sir, which actually disturbed me a lot where the judiciary is concerned. First was when Justice Karju was called in contempt to the Supreme Court. Sir, it shook my faith in the judicial system, and I didn't quite like it. Because we are not politicians who have to work on vendetta, sir. We know that politicians are working on vendetta, and more so even now. But where judges are concerned, I don't think that should be done. The second was this press conference, sir. It just shattered my, my image of the judiciary. Somehow or the other, it didn't go very well with me, sir. And the third is, the way the contempt matters are being dealt with by the Supreme Court is unfortunate. Somehow or the other, it doesn't build any confidence in the institution. We need to think of the judges as individuals, have to think in terms of the institution, not of themselves. I'm unimportant, sir. I'm just a speck of dust somewhere. But the judiciary has to remain, the institution has to remain, and all of us, we have to safeguard its not the own image. I'm not talking about the image. The image does not have to. The foundation has to be strengthened.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash, for giving your views. Now my question goes to Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Advocate Jyoti Pawar, do you agree that the government can lure the judges by offering them the Rajya Sabha seat, or making them the governor, or even making them the some commission's head on the cost of the public? Do you think it is a good practice and it should be banned, or what you think, whether it should be banned or it should be continued? Advocate Jyoti Pawar.
100%, there is no doubt, sir, that it has to be banned. Because what I have observed, that on the verge of retirement, the judges start giving judgments in the favor of the government only with this viewpoint that they will get appointment later on after the retirement. This practice has to be totally stopped. As I said, that the retirement age of the judges of High Court should be made from 62 to 65, so that such type of practices are somewhere curbed. And I have a strong feeling, sir, that the system of NJSC should be bought in, because the Mr. Justice J.S. Verma, who was the person who had struck down the judgment of NJSC and said that it is unconstitutional, later on made a statement in black and white that he is repenting on such a judgment, and the judges appointing the judges is a total failure. Now, as far as the appointments are concerned, that I have also stated in my main thing, that it should be totally banned, sir. Totally banned.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, my question goes to Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma about the appointment. See, we have a system where we are appointing bureaucrats, the police officers who are going up to the top, an IAS, IPS, or IFS officer. Why not IJS, where you select out of lakhs and lakhs of applicants, train them for 3 to 5 years for legal work, as you have mentioned? Why not a separate training for the judiciary? Train them in your training institutes, the selected judges or those who have been selected, make them perfect judge, and then that ladder will go up to the Supreme Court. No collision is required, no appointment from the any government interference is required, like it is going, except at the end of the career when they are appointing. It can also be done with the LOP and the Prime Minister and somebody on the basis, but not such type of system where we are appointing up, as Advocate Jyoti Pawar says, the relatives of the son or the Chacha Bhatijawad or whatsoever. Why not we do this?
Mr. Goyal,
Advocate Sharma.
Correct. Yeah. That initially the appointment of judges were being made by the government. That system was up to the mark when the appointment was being made on the basis of merit. But later on, the appointments were started to be made otherwise grounds, not on merit. So it creates a demerit, and this appointment of judges by judges started from 1993 with the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court by creating this collegium system. This NJSC Act was also, as has been said earlier, it was struck down. And mainly it was struck down because of the reason. The language of this act was such, which was interfering in the independence of the judiciary. That was the main reason. But actually, the appointment of judges should be done not by the judges, not by the legislature, but not by the government, but some independent body. Creation of independent bodies. This point was very much there, NJSC Act. This point was very much there.
I know, yes. But my question is different. I say, when you are appointing an IAS and IPS officer, a young person who starts his career from as assistant commissioner, assistant ACP, or assistant sub-magistrate or whatnot, and goes up to the cabinet secretary, why not you do the same system for judiciary? It's a UPSC will take exam. There will be a totally independent body, nothing to do, no favor, no favoritism. Why not we do accept that the thing in judiciary?
That suggestion was given by the then CJI body, but was not accepted by the government. That suggestion may be developed or may be amended to a certain extent, but it has totally been rejected by the government.
But do you agree with this suggestion?
Not at all.
No. You don't want that like IAS, IPS, IJS should come and they should be given full training?
Not like IAS, but there should be a separate independent procedure from beginning to high.
Okay.
Hard
So
time.
we will keep a one discussion on this point, a
Oh,
separate
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much. Now, my last question goes to Advocate Anita. I mean, time is short. Why not we have a time bound in all type of cases? Suppose you say matrimonial case 6 months. You say the murder case 1 year, a rape case so much time 3 months. Why not we have a different time frames for the different cases, so the matter is finished. Whether the advocate is appearing or not, that has nothing to do with the time frame should be fixed. What you say? Please unmute yourself, Advocate Anita.
I'm 100% agree with your proposal, because like a proposal I have already given to reform the judicial, that we should repeal the absolute law. So when the proposed law should come, it should come with the clause, sunset clause. That means it should come with the expiry date. So, I mean, the limitation period of a rape case or any evidence, property matters or civil matters or criminal cases, it should come with the clause that is sunset clause. So government must review and scrutinize laws periodically, which is not happening. So that is completely, I agree with limitation
Okay.
period.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So, viewers, you have seen today how the judicial reforms are required very badly, and all our experts have mentioned very, very clearly it's required. But why the government is not doing? Nobody knows. It might be that they also feel that if we will do the reforms, whether it will be good or not, or their priorities are different than to think about judiciary. But one thing is very clear, the judiciary is trying to give the best. Only problem is that they are not getting the infrastructure, they are not getting the facilities which they are supposed to get to deliver a good quality justice, which is and a time-bound justice which is required today. Thank you very much. And today's program has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV India, Newsgaon se, Samvad Saroka News, and as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring to you every day new thing. But for last 20 days, we are doing a program in the evening in Hindi, which is called Kal Aaj Aur Kal Lal Goyal Ke Sang, where we just talk to a achiever who has achieved something in life and their memories. And today's our chief guest is Kunwar Naren Singh, National Chief Patron, Akhil Bharatiya Kshatriya Mahasabha, Vice President, Rashtriya Lokdal UP from Mathura. So please tune in today at 4:30 p.m. Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Anjana Prakash. Thank you very much, Advocate Jyoti Pawar. Thank you very much, Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma. And thank you very much, Advocate Anita Mahapatra, for joining and giving your very, very enlightening legal views. I'm sure all our viewers are also been enlightened today and educated about the judiciary whatsoever today. Thank you very much.